Grid Alliance is a proud sponsor of Public Power Underground, a subsidiary of NextEra Energy and the leading transmission company in North America. Grid Alliance is a transmission-only utility company that's more than just wires. With operations in 3 regional transmission organizations, Grid Alliance works with electric cooperatives and municipal utilities to create collaborative solutions that integrate renewable energy and improve the reliability and resiliency of the electric grid. Learn more at gridalliance.com. That's gridliance.com. Welcome to a special recording of Public Power Underground. I'm Paul Dockery, the host of Public Power Underground and an electric utility enthusiast. On Public Power Underground, we talk about the electric utility enthusiasm trifecta of electrification, markets, and people. Today's episode of Public Power Underground was recorded live on stage at NWPPA's 83rd annual conference and membership meeting in Anchorage, Alaska. Debra Smith, the general manager and chief executive officer of Seattle City Light, was the organizing force behind the recording and is the moderator of the panel that includes Randy Hardy, Steve Wright, and Bill Drummond, who will all get introduced on the panel. As a production note, during the recording, there were some intermittent issues with Debra Smith's mic. You'll notice some portions had to be cut to adjust around that. On the panel, Debra and the panelists covered topics ranging from greatest regrets to reasons for optimism and proudest moments. At the end, I joined the celebrities to play an energy-inspired game I call Energy Enthusiasm Distilled. So stick around to listen to their greatest energy takes optimized for the TikTok algorithm. During the interview, Debra mentions her pending retirement. She has announced that she's transitioning from her role as the general manager of Seattle City Light to an advisory role starting June 30th and fully retiring from the city in November. She'll be greatly missed. This episode will be published close to her retirement. So this is my most public way of saying thank you. I enjoyed working with you and I love you too. My guess is you'll end up like the rest of your panelists with a career beyond this retirement date. So I'll add that I'm looking forward to working with you again. With that introduction of the episode, I'll turn it over to the host of the conference, the Northwest Public Power Association's Executive Director, Scott Corwin, to introduce the panel.
Again, I'm Scott Corwin, Executive Director, Northwest Public Power Association. Thank you for being here. I wanted to, before we kick us off here, I also wanted to thank a few folks that helped us locally organize all this, and actually even across the West helped us organize this, including the person chairing our events committee that I'll introduce in a second. But that events committee was made up of Libby Calnon, Brian Bertacci, Alex Cousins, Greg Cullen, Michelle Reimers, Molly Simpson, and Mike Squires on our board that helped oversee and guide us here. So thanks to all of them, and also thanks to our local folks that created a committee and created the swag, donated the bags, the swag in the bags, including NWPPA with the flashlights, but the other pieces were all from local folks. The Alaska Power Association, we mentioned earlier, Crystal, you met, and Mike Rovito hauled all this stuff around in the back of his truck. Thank you, Michael. MEA, Matanuska with Sabrina Combs, and you just saw Julie speak for Matanuska. Chugach, Julie Hasquet was the point person. Copper Valley, Sharon Scheit. Homer Electric, Carrie Ann Baker, and Jen Rosen. Yeah, so thank you, Homer, Copper, Chugach, MEA, and APA for all your help here this week. Thank you, look, folks, yeah. Okay, now without further ado, the chair of our events committee, the GM at Hood River Electric and Internet Co-op, a board member extraordinaire. Please welcome Libby Calnon.
Good morning, everyone. How are you today? I'm going to ask you to do something because it's fun. Everybody say hi. I have a background in communications, so if you've met me at this conference, I've probably taken a selfie with you. Communications people love that. Get yourself in some photos and send them back to your communications people at your co-ops. They will appreciate it. This morning I have the pleasure of introducing a great panel. These are some of our premier leaders in the Northwest Energy Circles and have been for the last few decades. And they're going to be talking about how we see the future of energy in the West shaping up. It's wonderful to have them all on stage together here in Alaska. Because you have all been wonderful about downloading the app, I'm not going to read their bios. I'm going to encourage you to go to the app and read the bios. So I will let you know that today we have former BPA administrators Randy Hardy, Steve Wright, and Bill Drummond. And they all were BPA administrators and still fill active roles in the energy space across the region. So it's great to have them here. And then to moderate and preside over the panel and make sure they do it right, we have Debra Smith from Seattle City Light here, and it's great to be on the stage with her. So welcome, everyone, and here you go, Debra.
Thank you. It's super fun to be here this morning. It's fun to be amongst friends and colleagues and people I haven't seen for quite a while, and it's incredibly gorgeous. Some of us have been talking about the how do you go to sleep when it's light? And I live on the 19th floor of a high apartment building at the corner of 2nd and Pike with lights all around. And so I'm pretty used to the light at night. But one thing that was actually very odd that took me by surprise was during COVID, when suddenly it got dark and the city got dark. Now that was more disconcerting to me, to look out and think about all the money I was losing because the lights weren't on. So that kept me up at night, if nothing else. So I'm super happy to be here and to moderate the panel. I think, Libby, I don't know how you and Scott called this. We're going to talk about the future. No, we're not. When people ask me to do something like this, or maybe in this case I asked to do it, I don't know. You can call it whatever you like, but we're going to have an interesting conversation. And as my friend Steve Wright told me once, the key is not to answer the question, it's to answer the question you wish you'd been asked. And so in this case, I'm going to ask the questions that I wanted to ask. And I promise you one thing, we will have a good time. And you will learn some new things potentially about some folks that you maybe thought you knew everything there was to know about. So these are friends of mine. I feel honored to be with them. They don't know the questions. So they don't know what I'm going to ask them. And this is an interesting thing. I said to them, hey, you're friends. You guys trust me, right? So when you say to somebody, you trust me, right? Do they really get to say no? It's a tough spot to put somebody in. So they went along with it. And so this is going to be an unscripted conversation. And I'm excited about it. So as Libby noted, these are our ex-Bonneville administrators. This was your ticket to the party, was because you are an ex-Bonneville administrator. And again, your bios are available on the app, and many of us know you, and we respect and honor and appreciate the work that you've done both in your roles at Bonneville and in the other activities that you've had along the way. And for some of you, that Bonneville gig was quite a while ago. For some of you, yeah.
I'm older than most of you in the audience.
Yeah. And this is your opportunity to provide a 2-minute elevator pitch or elevator speech. So let's pretend we're all in an elevator, and it's either stuck or it's an incredibly slow elevator. And while we're waiting for help, we decide to share stories. Unbelievable as it sounds, none of us have ever met each other. So this is your time to go. And so it's weird, but I'll go first. Hi, my name is Debra Smith. I've been in the business of helping people be more comfortable for almost 30 years. Started as an accountant, and I'm now what you call a well-rounded, well-seasoned, AKA older, executive serving as the CEO of one of City of Seattle's municipal electric utility. One of the things I'm proudest of is making it almost through my tour of duty without getting canned. But as my friend Randy Hardy likes to say, he's the only one to make it out alive in the last 50 years. So we're going to start with you, Randy. What's your elevator pitch?
Well, my elevator pitch is, I started out in 1966 as a graduate of the Naval Academy. and spent 10 years in active duty in the Navy, mostly in the Gulf of Tonkin. Learned a lot about management, learned a lot about a lot of things, but got married eight years into what turned out to be a 10-year Navy career, and then was lucky enough to transition into the electric utility business and get back out to the Northwest, and have been, in various utility positions here in the Northwest for the last 45 years. I now do consulting after my Bonneville stint, and occasionally, I was telling Libby before, you remember something from the past that is useful now. I think this is relevant to all three of us. Probably half of the workforce in your utilities has been hired since 2001 in the low water year that occurred then, which was one of the more seminal events in our 85-year history at Bonneville. There are lots of things that are new, and yet there are lots of things that are old that you can sometimes remind people of and are relevant for projecting into the future. And markets will provide is fine, and they will if you structure it right. But knowing when they won't is a key element of being able to manage your utility, at least in the lower 48, in a reasonable and responsible fashion.
Hi, I'm Bill Drummond. So Deborah hit me with this a few minutes ago outside, and suddenly, you have 2 minutes to say something, which is not my style at all. I tend to think and try to plan as much as I can. So I'll just say I came into this business completely by accident. I was originally a forester by training. It turned out nobody was willing to pay me to walk around the woods and commune with nature, which came as a terrible shock. I went back to school and ended up working for a guy who did work in the electric utility industry. And there went for about 40, now almost 42 years. My first interaction with NWPPA, I came to the 1989 annual meeting. Norm J. Cox was the executive director, and I gave a speech there because at the time I was the head of the Public Power Council. I have thoroughly enjoyed my career in public power, and I say a career in public power because I spent the vast majority of it there. Without question, what was the most fun, meeting the people. Just the people you get to work with are the best. So as I now, kind of look back at the tail end of that and realize that I am one of the old people that I used to look up to when I came into this business, I would urge you to encourage people to get into public power and join public service, because I'll never regret it.
All right, so my name is Steve Wright, and I a long time ago, was in college and got involved in some state legislative activity and then some campaigns for some state legislators, and fell in love with public service and decided that I was going to go to a public administration school for graduate school, and I wanted to spend my career in public service. And walked out of the University of Oregon, and fortunately the Northwest Power Act had passed just a couple of weeks before I graduated, and gave me an opportunity to be able to get a job there. And I spent the next 32 years there, and then another 8 years at Chelan Public Utility District. And of that time, the thing that was the most scarring event of my career and influences what the work I do today is what Randy referred to as the 2001 West Coast energy crisis, which was just unbelievable in terms of the amount of damage it did, and what felt like, honestly, a failure for our industry because of the impact on real world people who lost jobs, and what we did in terms of degrading the environment to try to increase supply and make it match demand. So today, I work a lot on resource adequacy issues, and honestly, I felt like it was resource adequacy and the way California managed the system that created those problems. And so it's resource adequacy and thinking about structures and for how the industry is put together and trying to make sure that we don't find ourselves in a position like that again.
I said that these three gentlemen are friends. I consider friends of mine. They are very close friends of each other. And so I want you to feel free to jump in. If somebody's answering a question and you want to follow up or ask them something else, do it. I want this to be interactive and fun for all of us. So those are the ground rules. Towards the end of our time together, we're going to play a game. Does anyone here listen to Public Power Underground? It's an amazing podcast, and we are fortunate to have the creator and a producer and star and I think all things Public Power Underground here with us today, Paul Dockery. So we'll do that towards the end, and we'll go from there. So I'd like to start with some reflections on the past. Okay, so this is a fun one, and I'm not going to assign. You can just decide who wants to go first. So if you could write your own eulogy, and I realize that some of you have probably done that because, as you've noted, you like to control things and plan things. But if you had, please share one example of something that you're particularly proud of and why.
Well, I'll go first. I think probably the event that I'm most proud of, but it's hardly something that I did alone, was in 1995. We had the Energy Policy Act of '92 had just passed, which deregulated electricity at the wholesale level, and that created the kind of Enron era of energy marketers, if you could call them that. And there all of a sudden, what we thought was a growing deficit turned into a surplus of electricity. You know, we've been there before in the early 80s with the Whoops nuclear plants, but this was a different kind of animal. We woke up one day in April of '95. We had Bonneville did, and I was CEO then. And we just got a letter from one of our DSI customers, the CEO, who happened to be a very good friend of mine, saying, "Randy, I'm really sorry, but we've got to take the top quartile of our service off of Bonneville and put it with a bunch of other suppliers, because you're just not competitive." And I said, "Okay, I understand. I want you to write me a letter, and I want the prices in there." And to his credit, he did. And it turned out that he was able to buy power from a number of suppliers at about 20 mils, about $20 a megawatt hour. And our wholesale rate at that time was $28 a megawatt hour. And we did not have take or pay contracts. That set off a mad scramble for us to cut our costs, cancel outstanding liabilities, and try to allow our customers some degree of flexibility, typically 15 to 20%, and not miss a treasury payment. If we would have missed our treasury payment, that would have been the federal equivalent of bankruptcy. And it would have put us, basically the operative political dynamic would have been that the Northwest delegation lost control of giving direction to the agency, and the Department of Energy would have had a much stronger hand, and we would have been responsive to changes in different administrations to a much greater extent than we are now. So what did we do? We cut 1,000, cut's the wrong word. We released 1,000 staff. We got the legislative authorization, thanks to Senator Hatfield, pay them a separation bonus, in essence. We canceled all kinds of agreements, probably the most relevant one being the Tenaska power contract for a combustion turbine that we ultimately settled after an arbitration for $350 million. They sued us for $1 billion. And a whole variety of other measures. We terminated the supply systems, number 1 and number 3 plants, which have been mothballed for 10 years, but we all knew were never going to be built. And the list goes on. But we had incredible support from the staff. And we went through, Steve may want to talk more about this. We thought we had it pretty well balanced because we had to cut all of our costs, which meant the way the so-called 7B2 formula in the Regional Power Act works, that we also, costs would be cut for the residential exchange subsidy that goes to residential small farm customers of investor-owned utilities. That earned us full-page ads from courtesy of Portland General Electric and Puget Sound Energy and the various Seattle Times and the Oregonian of what dirty, uncharitable people we were, and yada yada yada. And that was a difficult time because the narrative was that, you know, we were cutting this to save the aluminum companies. You know, no, we were doing it to save the agency and the public power and the benefits that it provided to not just to our customers but to the region as a whole. But the staff responded wonderfully to that meeting, or to that 6-month period of major changes. But probably most impressive was Senator Hatfield just saved our ass. Without him, we couldn't have done any of these things. But he set aside his normal agenda. And the neat thing about it was I showed him the letter from the aluminum company with the prices in it. He understood in 8 seconds what we were facing. No other politician in the delegation would even know after 3 hours what we were facing, but Senator Hatfield did. And to his credit, he jumped in and devoted an enormous amount of time and political capital, worked out a deal with the Vice President Gore to fish costs, and you know, all kinds of other things. Steve was our Washington D.C. liaison at the time, so he was, and Bill was with PPC at the time, and kind of was a interested and somewhat fearful observer, I expect, of what was going on. But we made it through, and I think that was the seminal moment in my career.
Thanks. That was. Can you hear this one?
Yeah.
That was great, Randy. Thank you. Let's a little round of applause for Randy for saving the day. And actually, I started in this industry in January of 1996. So I came into the utility during that period of flexibility and optionality. So it was a very interesting time to start. Was right on the heels of all of those decisions you'd made. Okay, who wants to go next?
Go ahead. You may. I think you'll follow on if I forecast correctly.
Well, honestly, it's hard to pick because there were so many fun things to be involved in, and the events that Randy talked about were incredibly exciting. If you're head of the Bonneville, Washington, D.C. office, to go to the meetings with Senator Hatfield and be involved in all of the legislation that occurred. Trying to get through the West Coast energy crisis was really hard. Putting the new power sales contracts in place was really hard. Trying to figure out how to do the Columbia Basin Fish Accords and work out arrangements with the tribes were really hard. But if I was going to pick one thing, it's actually the thing that I've done like from day one in my career. And by the way, it turns out I worked for Randy a couple of times. I worked for him in energy efficiency when I first started working at the agency way back in the early 80s. And I just have fundamentally believed that energy efficiency was the big, beyond the hydro system, the second big competitive advantage that the Northwest had, the opportunities and what we've been able to do to take advantage of it. And the thing that I probably am proudest of is when the 5th Council Power Plan came out, it said that we could double the amount of energy efficiency acquisition. And there was a lot of concern in the utility community about whether we could do that or not. And we put together a group that we called the Northwest Energy Efficiency Leadership Group, had a lot of public power involvement, a bunch of investor-owned utilities, folks from the energy efficiency community. And over the course of the next 5 years, we not only accomplished what was in the council plan, we went beyond it and we got more. And I think it showed that when we work together, we can do amazing things that we don't think we can do. We are able to accomplish when we work collaboratively together. And it was just a lot of fun to be involved in that and feel like that was something that made a big difference for the Northwest, both in terms of the economy, because it kept costs low, but in terms of the environment and some of the challenges that we would have had otherwise to try to meet load with what would have been some more environmentally damaging resources.
Thanks. And speaking for Seattle, we still believe that energy efficiency is the most cost-effective resource, and we remain committed to it. And we're at a fascinating point right now where we start to think about maybe energy efficiency in a broader way in terms of distributed energy resources and how do we use these various tools together along to allow us to electrify in an organized and cost-effective way. Bill?
Like Steve, it's difficult to sort of pick one thing because it's been such a fabulous ride. I would say if I look back at one thing, I spent 17 years working for a group of six small co-ops and a tribal utility in western Montana, all Bonneville customers. In the late 90s, as Randy was describing, Bonneville's costs were going up. They were coming into a period where they were going to have to sign new contracts. Lots and lots of customers. Judy Johansson faced a situation where lots and lots of customers were saying, we're not going to buy from Bonneville. We've got all these marketers coming to us telling us what a great deal it is. Certainly my vision for where Western Montana Generating and Transmission Co-op was going to go was to diversify. And we had diversified a portion of our load. My expectation was we were going to diversify a huge amount of it. Working with Bonneville, we found a relatively obscure clause in the authorization for Hungry Horse Dam that said a portion of Hungry Horse, the output of Hungry Horse was supposed to be for the benefit of the people of the state of Montana. Bonneville was desperate to sign contracts. They wanted to prove that they could negotiate and sign a contract with preference customers. And so we worked with them. We were able to sign a contract, a full requirements contract with Bonneville for each of our members, except one. There were, and again, it completely blew up my vision for the organization. I was really, I struggled with it mightily. Turned out it was the best thing ever. It saved those folks about $100 million over the 10-year life of the contract. It was an incredible deal. And, you know, as Randy alluded to, it was over my best arguments that they signed it, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, remember 2 cents in 2000, Bill. And we made that goal.
That's right. That's right. So that was the one thing I would point to.
That's great. I've got a quick one I'll share. So back earlier in my career, when I worked at the Eugene Water and Electric Board, I had the opportunity, I served for a period of time, Libby, I don't think you knew this, as the telecommunications development manager. And we had built our ring and we'd overbuilt. And so like a lot of utilities at the time, we thought, let's look at whether it would make sense to provide service. So we looked at everything from, you know, a total overbuild, and then ultimately landed on a project that we called MetroNet, and we were going to provide gig service to larger customers in predefined areas where there were business concentrations. And we went through and we did the work. We had a great business case. We went to City Council, got approval to use excess funds to get that started, and then we had a recession. And I remember going through the numbers and refreshing the numbers. And, you know, we're at this point where we have permission, we're supposed to start. And I finally went forward and said, we shouldn't do the project. It doesn't make sense to do the project. And the economics have changed. And being so vested in something and then having what felt for me, especially I was probably in my early, well, it probably wasn't even in my 40s, I was late 30s, barely 40. I still look back at that, and sometimes I wonder if I'd have the guts to do it today, but it was a very hard decision. It haunted me, but yeah, it's something I feel really, really proud of, because it would have been a big mistake had we moved forward, and so I'm thankful for that. Okay, this is a short one. Okay, you get one. Well, first of all, quick question. Do any of you play golf?
Play golf?
Golf.
Yeah, I used to. I don't anymore.
I know these guys are keeping track over here. I think it's Steve and Bill about how many runs they got on the slopes now that they are quote unquote retired versus the old days. But golf is another one. So you get one mulligan. One mulligan. What would you do over?
I'd probably be at Bonneville a little longer in my career.
There you go. That's a good one.
Yeah, I would have never approved the Tenasca contract.
Which one?
The Tenasca turbine contract, the one I alluded to that cost us $330 million to settle. It was, I don't want to go into the details of it, but it was a terrible, two things happened. One, we thought we had a power shortage and we had a surplus a la the 1980s. The second thing is we wrote a terrible contract with cost escalators in it that never should have been in it. And I didn't review it in the name of let the staff do the work kind of theme within the agency at the time. I didn't review it carefully enough. That was by far the biggest mistake I ever made.
I think I stayed too long. There were some reasons to stay because the way retirement worked, investing and some of those kinds of things. But there's a period of time when you are going up the slope and you're getting better, and then you get to be good, and then there's a point when which you are going downhill. And I went beyond that point, I think, and should have left earlier.
Yeah, mine is the same, because I actually, unlike you guys, got to think of these questions. Isn't that fun? So I stayed too long at eWeb. When I applied for the GM job and didn't get it, I stayed 3 years, and I should have left sooner. I don't think I was doing employees a whole lot of favor by being there during that period of time. So, yeah, I would have left sooner. Okay, we're going to move forward to the present. So that was the past. Now we're in the present. I may or may not be making a career change in the next few months, and so I thought it would be fun to talk to you about this. This is a lightning round. So did any of you actually intend to fully retire when you left your last full-time gig? We know you didn't, but did you ever intend to?
No, I didn't. I wanted to keep involved in the industry. At the time I retired, I was in my mid-50s. And so I had, a lot of things that I thought I could do. And I did this consulting thing at first intending for it to just be a bridge to be a senior executive in some other utility. And then for personal reasons, we adopted a son in 1992. It was a 1 pound, 12 ounce preemie, and had significant complications with that. But the biggest one was that he has very severe dyslexia. And so at that time, Chris was about 7 or 8, and I had to be the homework dad. And that was just completely incompatible with any line management position of any type. So I did the consulting, and that's turned out fine. And now Chris is off, and he works for the local car repair garage, and he's a terrific mechanic, and that's just the right niche for him. And and I'm busy still consulting, and you miss not being at the center of things and being able to decide stuff. But the schedule flexibility and the lack of stress is well worth it.
How about you two?
So I thought, I actually had hoped that I would stay involved in the business in some fashion, just because I enjoy the people so much, and the issues are endlessly fascinating. The challenges never stop over 40 plus years. So I'd hope to stay involved, but at the same time, I didn't want it to interfere with skiing and biking and travel and everything else. So I'm sort of still working on that balance a little bit.
I definitely fully intended to be involved in some way, but I wanted it to be more part-time. I'm not doing a very good job of that right now, so I have to rebalance again and get back to more part-time. But Like Bill said, the hardest thing actually is you get used to talking to the people and you miss the conversations and the opportunity to both catch up on what's going on in the industry, but you have all these people that you know about their lives, right? You know, their families and how they've gotten to where they are. And you miss those opportunities just to be able to catch up.
What do you find most personally fulfilling about this new life that you've created for yourself? But you kind of already all answered it and spoke about people and relationships and being involved. Is there anything you'd add to that?
I don't think so.
Well, I had something I wanted to say while I was up here, and it might remember that.
Does it involve Markets Plus and SPP, Steve?
No. But you said, remember, I told you before, I like to answer the question I want to get asked, so I'm going to answer that one for a moment. We put together an event about a year and a half ago. Actually, it was a guy by the name of Eric Redmond suggested this, and he said, you should get all the living former administrators together and just have them be together for a weekend. And so we did. Came to Wenatchee, pretty much everybody came, and we had the most amazing weekend, actually. And what was incredible about it, the thing that I remember the most, was a conversation that went around and said, what was the best job you ever had? And everybody said, the best job I ever had was the Bonneville job. And we had Don Hodel there, who had been Secretary of Energy and Secretary of Interior, and he said, best job I ever had was the Bonneville job. Because of this incredible ability to be able to do things that really mattered, that were important, made difference in people's lives. And there was a lot of authority there. And candidly, there was a lot of help and cover, because the part that we don't tend to talk about publicly very much is the Washington, D.C. angle to the Bonneville job. It's a huge part of the job, is trying to manage the Washington, D.C. angle. And there's this tremendous amount of help and support that all of us got during that time from people in DC. Randy spoke about Senator Hatfield, but there's story after story. And I could, tell you a dozen stories from my time about members that really were incredibly helpful. And, politics has this, cultural aversion in our country. Actually, there are tons of people who are elected officials that are really committed to public service and want to do the right thing. And you can work with them. At Bonneville, you can work with them. So there's just that was the biggest thing. There's this opportunity to do something big and to work with folks who were committed as you were to try to make good things happen.
This is a lightning round question. So you get to say yes or no, and then you get to say like one sentence. So some would say, and some do say, that the industry we love is in the midst of the greatest transformation since the electrification of rural America. Do you agree or disagree? And if you agree, what's the driver for that change? What's one driver for that change?
Yes, decarbonization and trying to figure out how to make variable energy resources substitute for dispatchable generation. It's really hard to do and be affordable, reliable, and clean.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the making that transition, particularly making it affordable and reliable. Steve and I have had this conversation a number of times where a $30 price for a solar or wind plant, when you get down to providing the same product with load following and balancing and everything else, is actually a $50 to $60 price when you get done with it. That never appears in any press release, but that's the reality that you as managers have to deal with.
I would agree. For me, it's less on the resource side and more on the transmission side. How in God's name are we going to keep the system reliable when it takes 20 years to plan, to permit, and to construct a new transmission line? And I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah, and I don't think many people do. I think that is one of the big questions folks are struggling with. Okay, so let's imagine that you are in a conversation with my 7-year-old grandson, Oliver, who's incredibly smart and very bright, and he asks you, he says, "Hey, Uncle Steve, why did you and my Nana take so long and to let climate change get so bad without taking action?"
The U.S. political system, in my judgment, are just universally true, has real difficulty when you have to make near-term investments and incur near-term costs for long-term benefits. That's about the hardest thing you have to do in politics, but that's what combating climate change requires, and our system isn't very good at accommodating that.
I'll share all of that with Oliver when I see him next. And last, because we need to end on a good note, despite that last question, what gives you hope? And I'm going to start with you, Bill.
Going to say, I think that public power, because it's so connected to the people, will figure out ways to make this work. Two things I've seen in the last 2 years I'm really excited about: new technology and the entrepreneurialism of the American economy. It really is incredible. We just have this amazing country that allows us to come up with new technology and make things happen. I look at the changes during the course of my career and think, this business operates way differently than it used to. It's going to keep getting better and better. It's a really good thing that some of us are going to retire, because we need a lot of new people who think differently than we do to make this work. And I just can't wait to see what folks are going to come up with and how they're going to figure out how to solve some of these difficult problems. I think they will.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to invite my friend Paul Dockery up to play the game, but let's give these gentlemen some applause, because these were amazing comments and thoughts. And they were worried, and it was fine. You guys did great.
I think they were less worried about yours and more worried about my game. So we're going to play a game. Public Power Underground is for electric utility enthusiasts, and we try to distill down complex energy topics in infotaining ways. So we're going to play a game together, trying to synthesize complicated topics for each other. Each of you are experts in like niche energy topics. So we're going to give each of you 2 minutes and 20 seconds. That's a Twitter length video amount of time to explain your topic of expertise in an infotaining way. And then the other panelists will have the optimal TikTok video length of 34 seconds to regurgitate back what they said and try to be more entertaining. And we're doing this for an award that I'm calling the Seen, Heard, Valued, and Appreciated Award of Public Power Underground. So it'll be my decision at the end on who wins, and I'll probably try to get some feedback, because let's be honest, they're way more powerful than me. And if I choose wrong, I get to blame all you if you participate in it. So that's probably what we're going to do. So with that, we're going to start with the first topic. And the first topic is for you, Steve. You are a recipient of the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance's Chairperson Award, and one of the first leaders in the region to articulate energy efficiency's role in a more resilient power system. And you mentioned earlier it's one of the prides of your career is working on energy efficiency. So can you synthesize for all of us the importance of price-responsive demand for the energy transition in 2 minutes and 20 seconds? Or less. Ready? I got a clock, because this is where you're on the clock. Ready? Go.
Well, so first of all, we have a huge resource adequacy problem as a region, and it's worse than we think it is. You know, I've spent some time on this in the last year, and the numbers are not good. There's way more load out there than we thought. The PNUCC forecast that came out a month ago tells us that. We got to figure out a way to solve that. We will not be able to build enough generation, I don't think, and transmission to be able to keep up. And so we're going to have to find some other alternatives. And the best alternative that's out there is a combination of energy efficiency and demand response. And we're going to have to figure out a way to engage our customers and in order to be able to keep the lights on. Price is a way to be able to send signals to customers. The really hard part about this is going to be the values keep changing. So we used to think that there was nighttime and daytime, and that's where the value was a differential. Now all of a sudden it's 6 to 8 o'clock at night. In the Midwest, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the wind stops blowing. We're going to be sending very confusing signals to our customers about when is the right time to use electricity to be able to get the price responsive value. But we're going to have to figure out a way to communicate with them, because I think if we don't, we face a really serious reliability problem.
Well done. Well done. You had a whole minute left, and that earns you extra points, right, everybody? Extra points for Steve because he left a minute on the clock. Look at that. They're cheering you on. Okay. So the next is we're going to get in 34 seconds, you're going to try to be more infotaining. Think analogies, think memes, think examples, think something like that. Debra, I'm going to go with you next. I'm going to put you on the clock for 34 seconds. We're almost there. It's going to take me like 10 seconds to get to 34 seconds. I got to 35. You get an extra second because you're my general manager.
We're moving from a time of, what, am I starting? Yeah, we're moving from a time of passive, our customers do what we tell them to, including energy efficiency in many ways, to a time where they will have to engage with us and be full partners. That's hard for us because we don't necessarily like being full partners with our customers because there is a long history of us knowing what's best.
Yes! Holy cow! Well done. You have 14 seconds left. That's amazing. Okay, so we're going to go to Randy next. You ready, Randy?
Yep.
You got 34 seconds. Ready? Go.
Electric vehicles. That's the biggest challenge we're going to face, because there'll be the optimal time to charge will be different in California than it is in Kansas, than it is in the Northwest, than it is in New England. And trying to communicate that differential signal to people, forget about charging stations and all the other problems with electric vehicles, is going to be really challenging.
You guys are doing great. You guys are synthesizing a complicated topic in infotaining ways. And
Bill, look at Bill.
You're up next, Bill. You're ready for this. I know you're ready for this. You got an example for me? Just waiting for me, right?
Make a joke about Ted Lasso.
Yes, that's all you got to do. And then you win the game. I accidentally gave you 40 seconds, but you get 40 seconds. Go.
That's all right. It's been remarkable to watch the transformation of energy efficiency from something that was originally viewed as, now we as utilities are going to pay our customers to use less of our product, to today where it's an opportunity, a resource that we all need to go out and acquire. The Northwest is so far ahead of many other parts of the country in energy efficiency, but we've got to do better. And we've got to make it a system that people want to participate in.
And use
Right
the whole
on
time.
the
I
timer.
actually think you maybe get extra points for using the whole time on that one, actually. Okay? Here's my sense of this. Nobody asked me, but I'm up here, so I get to do it anyway. Price responsive demand is the sexy new frontier of energy efficiency. It's the sexy new frontier. Price responsive demand. Okay, so that's the first one. Up next, we're going to talk to you, Randy, and we're going to talk about Northwest transmission and transmission constraints. So you get 2 minutes and 20 seconds to talk about how you're going to solve transmission for all of us. Are you ready? Go.
Bonneville. There is no other transmission organization in the Northwest that's positioned to do much of anything at this point. You've got Northern Grid, you've got other organizations that they're just not going to make it. They're useful for tactical, individual, projects like looking at Oregon offshore wind, but not the omnibus thing. Bonneville's laid out its tier 1 projects. That's a good start. Bonneville thinks it's enough to serve all of its objectives, meet all of the 80% clean energy demands in Oregon and Washington by 2030. No way. It'll meet some of them. It won't meet all of them. But Bonneville still has to be the agency and the vehicle for building the transmission lines, installing series capacitors and other devices that can be done within substations and are a lot environmentally more doable than building a new transmission line. We'll get there eventually, but we will not get there in the 2030 timeframe to the degree that the politicians have decreed. But having those mandates is what is helping people move. That's a significant benefit in and of itself. And we'll get to a mid-course correction point. My guess is about 2028 or 2029, and we'll see what that is, and that will help us.
You're doing great.
That will help us, significantly. But right now, in my view, we still need to do a lot more, and Bonneville and the other, particularly investor-owned utilities who own most of the transmission in the Northwest, are lagging, with the exception of PacifiCorp. was building transmission, but for its own marketing objectives as opposed to any regional benefit. It'll help, but it won't. But those things together need to still accelerate significantly.
It was a bold strategy to start your infotaining answer with Bonneville and end with PacifiCorp, but I respect it. That was a bold strategy. I respect it. We're going to go to Bill. You're going next on transmission. Can you solve transmission in 34 seconds or less, or just describe transmission issues that we need to solve in 34 seconds or less? Or I'll keep meandering and until I get to 30. I stopped at 35. I just pressed the button until it goes. Ready, Bill?
Yeah. Ready. I would commend to all of you a paper that just came out from the Northwest Independent Power Producers Council or Coalition, whatever, NIPSI and the Renewable Northwest, because it talks about the very thing that Randy described. What is the role of Bonneville in regional transmission? It's a real tour de force, and you will be much better educated on the issue. It can be a little thick, but I would really recommend it because they have a point of view, but it's a fascinating paper.
And half of it is educational, purely.
Yes.
The other half is advocacy, but the educational part, I learned some things that I didn't know.
Yeah.
You learned some things that you didn't know. It's that good.
Well, I think so, but
Okay, Steve, you're up next. Solve transmission issues in 34 seconds or less. You got to follow a tour de force in Bonneville and PAC. So it's a high bar for infotainment right now. Ready? Take it away.
Ditto to Randy and Bill. And then on top of that, we really need a regional transmission plan. And unfortunately, I don't think we have a strong regional transmission planning organization at this point. And I think Northern Tier could be it, but we really need to lay out the plan so the public can see where the opportunities are. And second, there's an effort going on to try to remove some of the civil service rules for Bonneville so Bonneville could compete and be able to hire talent. And honestly, that really needs to happen because the differentials between Bonneville and public power, much less the investor-owned utilities in terms of pay, gotten too big.
Yeah, and championing people is a great way to win this game. So you really got the inside job on it because championing people is a theme of Public Power Underground. We like to talk about people and advocating for people and recruiting people to public power because we need to replace an aging workforce. So, Debra, 34 seconds or less.
Okay, planning, markets, I don't care which one. Agree that PacifiCorp will build what's in their best interest, and without planning, that will not serve us as a region in the way we need it. And lastly, a big part of it is to lean into distributed energy resources that don't require the long transmission belts.
That was awesome. That was awesome, Debra.
He works for me, by the way. So.
I do actually. If you've listened to Public Power Underground, you know the 3 Ps of transmission planning: permitting, paying for, and planning. The 3 Ps. And we all learned from Rob Glamlich, if you listen to Public Power Underground, that paying for is 2/3 of it. So the markets, the RTO, those type of organizations, very, very important. Okay. Any y'all have some ideas? I don't know how to read the room. I don't have any way of surveying you. So you're just going to have to give me your vibes. Just give me your vibes on who you think. There's a thumbs up over there. Okay. Next up is Bill Drummond, who is the chair of the Western Power Pool on board of directors. Bill, as a member of and representative of the organization that has established the West's first resource adequacy program, you are our expert on planning for peaks. So in 2 minutes and 20 seconds or less, can you explain resource adequacy, 1 in 10 loss of load expectation, and planning standards as utilities plan for increasing peaks? Just a couple things. You think you can do that in 2 minutes, 20 seconds? Okay,
all right,
go.
Ready, go. When the power went out last time at your home or business, what was your first thought? When's the power going to come back on? How long is my cell phone going to last? How will I get heat? What will happen to the food in the refrigerator? For roughly 80 years, the Northwest Power Pool, now the Western Power Pool, is focused on the reliability of the electric power system. The members agreed to voluntarily share their electric reserves if one of them experienced a loss a lost transmission line or a generator trip that they could not handle alone. Over time, this informal sharing of reserves was formalized and now saves the region roughly 5,000 megawatts of installed capacity that the region doesn't have to install or acquire. The Western Power Pool Reserve Sharing Program focuses on operational reserves, carrying a balancing authority that is short for roughly an hour until it can find other resources. Planning adequacy, making certain that sufficient generating and transmission resources are in the pipeline to meet anticipated load, was always the purview of individual utilities and the regulators. A series of events have changed that paradigm. We talked about some today. The shuttering of carbon-based resource generation, adding huge volumes of intermittent resources, wild weather-related load excursions we never could have imagined, and the inability to plan, permit, and construct new transmission in a timely fashion. Resource adequacy is simply too critical to leave to the purview of individual utilities and the regulators alone. The Western U.S., except for California, has developed a new approach to planning adequacy. The Western Regional Adequacy Program, focusing on planning and operational adequacy, 22 member entities must show that they have adequate capacity to meet future summer and winter peaks. It's a system that's voluntarily policed with agreed upon planning standards, a well-defined timeline, resource crediting standards, transmission requirements, and enforceable penalties for failing to meet the standards. This also requires a new governance structure and much greater member and stakeholder participation. The RAP won't stop all blackouts, but it will help identify planning adequacy issues before they become a problem. Sorry, and I know one last thing. I don't know if 1 day in 10-year reliability metric is appropriate, but I do know that I have never heard a customer or a member request that their power be less reliable.
Never have you?
Never.
And you know what, Bill? You know what? You know the path to my heart on these things? Preparation. I loved your preparation. That was absolutely great. Great summary of what's been going on and great synthesis of the topic. So, Randy, I'm going to go to you. 34 seconds or less. Resource adequacy. Infotaining is possible. Ready? Go.
Proper prior planning prevents piss-poor performance. My military motto applies to this.
You're going to cede your time, right? Yeah. After the applause, you don't need to say anything more, right? That was perfect. Do you want to say more? You still got 16 seconds.
I don't know that the current YRAP program adequately, I know it does not yet include low water because there's a capacity program. That's a problem. It needs to get there. They know that. I'm hopeful that they'll get there. Enough said.
Perfect. Enough said. Well done. Okay. Deborah, you're up next. I'm going to give you 34 seconds for you to explain resource adequacy in an infotaining way. I'm going to get to 34 seconds. Go.
Resource adequacy is incredibly important to us, and we also need to build and acquire new resources. And guess what? That's on the investor-owned utilities.
Awesome. Okay. Steve, you answered in my first question with 2 minutes and 20 seconds. You answered the question you wanted to answer there. You started energy efficiency with resource adequacy. Now end some resource adequacy with some infotainment explanation of why it's important to the region. Ready? Take it away.
Well, these folks, again, ditto to what they said, but there's a couple things I think we could think about. Number one, we're the only region that uses average megawatts and worries about that. I think the challenge is we need to be Lake Wobegon and figure out how we have above average megawatts. We could solve that problem. And then actually inertia, our engineers worry a lot about inertia. We need more bring your kids to work day. If Deborah would hire my 2 kids, I could solve the inertia problems in Seattle. No time at all. Yeah. And you could pay my kids. That'd be great.
They're just always spinning around. Kids are like so much energy, so much momentum, so much enthusiasm. Okay, we're going to end this with Debra. You are a world-renowned expert at leading electric utilities with enthusiasm. So in 2 minutes and 20 seconds or less, can you distill the essence of electric utility leadership with enthusiasm? Ready? Go.
Okay, first of all, I love my employees, and I'm not afraid to use the word love. I think it's okay for us to love our employees. We love our jobs. Why wouldn't we love the people that we work alongside? I believe in accountability, transparency, and intentionality. And I talk about all three of those to employees all the time, and I believe they only work if they go together. I also believe that employees and people, we all deserve to have a supervisor who cares about us, who cares about our future. I talk to supervisors about that regularly. And I think if I have a people problem, it's always my number one problem, and that's my expectation for the folks that work for me. Stop what you're doing, deal with the people problem, because if your people aren't enthusiastic, no amount of enthusiasm at the top is going to matter. Last thing I'll say is that I deeply believe that people are resilient and capable of hearing really hard things. That means feedback. As long as that feedback is delivered with kindness and in a safe environment. As leaders, one of our primary jobs is to create an environment that's safe enough for people to receive feedback, because it's only through that folks are able to come to work, feel safe, supported, and able to do their best work every day. And let's be honest, as leaders, I don't do work. What I do is create an environment where other people can be successful, can grow, and do work. And that's how you create an enthusiastic workforce.
Well said. Lead with love. That's a very good, enthusiastic answer. Okay. We're going to go with 42 seconds.
How much time did I use?
You had 42 seconds left. And you're
I'm going to
cede
it to Randy.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go to Randy, okay? And 42 seconds are left because it's what's on the clock, and I don't have to reset it.
Okay.
Leading electric utilities. Go for it.
5 rules. 1, get out of the office. Spend your time out in the workforce as much as you can. Don't sit in your office. 2, reward in public, criticize in private. 3, clear policy guidance. You can always get consensus by increasing the generality of the conclusion. You need specific, precise policy guidance for people to be able to respond appropriately. 4, know the first names of your employees. When I ran Seattle City Light, an organization of 2,000 people, I knew the names of first names of 3/4 of the people. That's what you need to be able to do. And finally, keep hope alive. Hope is a powerful motivator. You've got to nurture that, especially in times of crisis, so people know they can rely on you.
Great numbered list. I respect numbered list. If Crystal Ball was in the audience who couldn't come this year, she would be applauding for your numbered list. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to come to you, Steve. We're going to end with Bill. So in 34 seconds or less, what message would you give to lead electric utilities?
So we live in a world in which actually we have increasing levels of wealth. And when you have increasing levels of wealth, people aren't as worried about how much money I'm making. They're more focused on meaning and purpose. And we're in an industry that creates meaning and purpose. We do stuff that really matters. And so it's bringing the inspired public service to the business about the fact that we're doing something that can change people's lives and connecting people, whether it's your accountants, to your economists, to the fact that what they're doing is not just adding up numbers, they're doing something that actually improves and enhances the quality of life for the people that we serve.
Lead with purpose. I like it. Beautiful. Okay. You get the last word, Bill, on leading with that enthusiasm. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Take it away.
I am so thrilled to look out across the audience and see younger people involved in public power. I would urge each and every one of you to reach out to any students, kids, grandkids that you have, and encourage them to consider a life in public power. You get to address global issues, greenhouse gases. You get to address where our power is going to come from. You get to address reliability. You get to address all of the things that electricity covers. So encourage young people to get involved in this industry.
Encouraging young people to get involved. Common theme. Let's do it. Take it. Come on, you, right, Randy? You already went. That was it. That was it. That's the end of the game. I lost track. Congratulations. Okay, you got to help me out here. You got to help me out. We got we'll just do applause, and then you can help me. I'll decide who gets the loudest applause. Okay, we got Lake Wobegon and above average megawatts. Who's voting for Steve? Gets the seen, heard, valued, and appreciated? Okay, good. That's great. Really. Okay, who wants to give preparation a round of applause? Who gives the seen, heard, valued, and appreciated to Bill for the preparation and insightful synthesis? Okay, we got the best mottos of the panel. Let's be honest. The best mottos of the panel. Randy, cheer for Randy. Okay? And then lastly, who wants to vote for my CEO on leading with love? Who wants to vote for love? Debra Smith. Congratulations, you won the game. Debra, it says on here, Debra, you've won the Seen, Heard, Valued, and Appreciated Award. Congratulations. Thank you, everybody. I wanted to just say, Public Power Underground is on Substack, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It's a production of Seattle City Light and News Data. It is sponsored by NWPPA, Energy Northwest, and Grid Alliance, all of which are in the room. It's a public power podcast. Public Power Underground for electric utility enthusiasts. Public Power Underground, it's worth to watch.
And today's entire conversation will potentially be on Public Power Underground.
That's right. If you go download the app, it's great. So thank you so much. And I will leave you to close it out, Debra. But thank you for including me.
Well, thank you so much for allowing us to spend time with you today. I really want to thank my panelists. You were great sports. It was very easy. And I thought it was super fun to hear. And I do think sometimes preparation is important. It is always important, but sometimes it's fun to have a conversation, to not know exactly where it's going to go. So you actually don't know this, but I had a lot more questions and I kind of went where you were going. So thank you very much for playing around. And I really appreciate the fact that you trust me. Thank you, guys.
We started in hard times to bring us all into the laughter through thick and through thin, for public power enthusiasts without and within.
Public Power Underground is a production of Seattle City Light and News Data. The views expressed here are our own and not the official views of Seattle City Light, News Data, or the organization of the guests also appearing on Public Power Underground. Public Power Underground is electric utility and electric utility adjacent news from a power department's perspective. Today's episode was written and produced by Debra Smith and Paul Dockery. Shout out to Debra Smith again. Thank you for all the work you did on this panelist and for hosting it so elegantly. And it's edited and published by the stellar team at Pioneer Utility Resources, with sound mixing by Lucas Smith and video editing by Brendan Delzer. Special thanks to Kevin Shepsky from IMIG Audio Video for audio and video support at the Event Center in Anchorage, Alaska. Our theme song, Roll On Enthusiast, was rewritten, performed, and recorded by Aaron Guillory and Ian Bledsoe. You don't have to be subscribed to News Data's weekly newsletter to get this podcast, but it sure makes the podcast make a lot more sense. Public Power Underground for electric utility enthusiasts. Public Power Underground, it's worth to watch.